Hello and welcome to another episode of Cascadia Mountain Weather. It's Thursday, May 30th, 2024. My name is Kyle McCrow and I'm here with Wyatt Mullen. And this map here shows the departure from normal temperature over the last 2 weeks. It's been quite a bit colder across the entire Pacific Northwest. You can see some areas are close to 10 degrees colder than normal during this period. Most of the areas are 2 to 4, maybe 6 degrees colder than normal. So if you've been around here for a while, you've definitely felt it. People call this Mayuary, maybe soon moving into January. And, just when you think like summer's right around the corner, it's been cold. It's also been pretty wet. So over the last week, this is the estimated rainfall over different areas. And most of the lowlands, we're looking at, an inch, maybe less than an inch actually in the rain shadowed areas. But in the mountains, especially the convergence zone, kind of in Snohomish County in the Cascades, the estimates are around 4 inches of rain, which is pretty substantial for this time of year over just a week. And over the last like 2 weeks or more, we've gotten probably 10 inches an estimate. And a lot of that's fallen as snow above about 6,000 feet or so. We've seen freezing levels fluctuate anywhere from like as low as 3,000, but more commonly, I'd say 5,000 up to like 7K. So that's definitely delaying the transition in the snowpack. So our snowtail metrics at this point in the season are not that useful to look at because certain areas, stations have like typically melted out at this point. So like small variations can create crazy percentage variations, but you can still see the general theme that the snowpack is and has been better in the Southern Cascades all year. So now let's look at a few specific sites. This is about 4,000 feet in the Eastern Olympics, so in the drier part of the Olympics. And you can see the black line was this year, and we never really got that close to typical peak. And we were behind all year until now. So because of the cooler weather, the slower melt out, we're actually probably going to melt out around the same time as typical for this location. This is 4,000 feet in the Mount Baker region. And it's kind of the same story, like a pretty sad snowpack for a lot of the year. But now we are basically back to normal melt out through the cold weather. And even this is true at the higher elevation. So Paradise, we have more ground to make up. And the melt out occurs a little later because it's at 5,400 feet. But we've lost very little snowpack from the peak here at Paradise. Probably less than 10%, whereas usually the decline's like getting pretty steep by this time of year. So the benefit of the, cooler weather is it's helped kind of get our melt out back to normal. And so even after a relatively low snow year, this is really great news for our rivers and our glaciers heading into the summer.
Yeah, and so getting into this weekend, it does look that possibly a warm up is on the horizon. But before that, we have to get through the atmospheric river, which is pretty rare we're going to be getting into June in just a couple days, and we don't get that many atmospheric rivers this late in the season, but it does look like we're going to be seeing one. The exact specifics of this graph aren't that important. Basically, it just is showing kind of the velocity that water vapor is being transported through the atmosphere. But the important thing is that it's really great at showing atmospheric rivers, like really large columns of moisture moving from the tropics to our location. You can see this is looking kind of Sunday night into Monday, showing this big plume of moisture pointed directly at Washington and Oregon. So we'll get into that in a second. Looking at precipitation, tomorrow, Friday, looks pretty good. Looks like it should be pretty clear. There might be some clouds hanging around. Unfortunately, when we get further into the weekend and Saturday, we'll see some light showers move in, and they're going to be particularly prevalent kind of in the north section and the west section, similar to last weekend, where the further east and south that you go, the more likely that you'll be able to avoid that precipitation. But that will be hanging around most of Saturday. There'll definitely be in the lowlands be some chances of some sun breaks coming out, and some kind of clouds and showers hanging through the mountains throughout the day Saturday. And then as we get into the morning Sunday, and especially kind of by early afternoon Sunday, we'll see that atmospheric river coming in with pretty heavy precipitation kind of coating throughout the whole area. And that will likely last overnight Sunday when the heaviest precip will move through into the early morning Monday. In terms of total precipitation. Oh, let's go back one, just because I want to show this. In terms of total precipitation, we're probably going to see upwards of 1 to 2 inches in the lowlands, and maybe 2 to 5 inches plus in the mountains. So this is a pretty rare occurrence, and we can even look at kind of what the National Weather Service is forecasting. So this median value, which they just put out today, looking at maybe over an inch in Bellingham, maybe 2 inches along the coast, and kind of an inch maybe close to Seattle. There aren't that many June days where we've seen over an inch of precipitation, maybe about 10 days total in the last 50 to 70 years, including actually 2 years ago in 2022 when we saw some pretty heavy precipitation move through in the second week of June. So it is pretty rare to see that. So like during the winter, this would be a pretty normal storm, but by this time of the year, it's pretty rare, and will kind of make things difficult in the mountains. With that precipitation, kind of a characteristic of those atmospheric rivers is they're quite warm. And so that means that our freezing level is going to bump up pretty high, especially with the first part of the atmospheric river, and especially in the southern Washington Cascades. Like it might be kind of in the 8 to 10,000 foot range during the heaviest precipitation, and it'll likely drop back down to kind of the 6 to 7,000 foot range as that precipitation begins to taper off. And you might see a couple more storms move through early next week with maybe some moderate to high snow levels. But that's something to like think about, is that even if you go, well, this will highlight just kind of, there's going to be a difference between the North Cascades or the North Washington Cascades and the South Washington Cascades likely, where the snow level up in the North Cascades will probably be in the 6 to 7, maybe 8,000 foot level, while down in the South kind of Cascades near Rainier, probably be more in that, like I said, like 8 to 10,000 foot level. So just be aware of that if you are going out after this weekend, that there might be more snow kind of up in the north. And we can look at that in terms of Mount Rainier, where here's our kind of point forecast, highlighting that even at 6,500 feet, we're seeing kind of a rain-snow mix or rain. And if we bump up to even 9,500 feet, we're still seeing that rain-snow mix for part of the weekend. And also, if we look at the kind of the zone forecast as well, you can see that 9,000 foot freezing level, especially on Sunday night when the bulk of that precipitation is moving through. And then finally, just wanted to look at the clouds. Like I said, it's not going to be a completely clear day tomorrow, but it'll be pretty close to average temperature-wise, mid 60s to low 70s in the lowlands. And then as we move into Saturday, we see this big shield of clouds and the precipitation, pretty light, but definitely limiting visibility in the mountains. And then we see maybe some sun breaks popping through as we get later in the day Saturday, before Sunday this big wave of rain off the coast moves in and moves through, especially over the night Sunday into Monday. So not terrible weekend, and it will be difficult to kind of find a spot to be dry, but Friday and Saturday, especially south, look significantly better than the rest of the weekend.
So we definitely have some changes probably on the horizon. The long-term 6 to 10 day temperature outlook is definitely going for above average temperatures in all of the West and below average precipitation in our region. I think the real question we'll want to be watching, and we'll get to this next week, is how warm is it going to get after this storm? This is the surface temperature projected by one European run for next weekend, and it's showing upper 90s in eastern Washington and upper 80s in western Washington. So this would be a pretty substantial heat wave for so early in June, and something to keep an eye on. I know a lot of people are going to get really excited about going up high on Rainier after it's been bad weather for a few weeks, but keep in mind, like if we see 2 to 3 feet of fresh snow above 10,000 feet, and then it warms up towards 90 degrees in the lowlands, that does sound like a recipe for snow instability and post-hauling and sloppy snow conditions in general. So you really want to kind of track that snow line because areas below the snow line that don't get fresh snow probably will be able to handle the heat a little better. So that's something to watch if we do get a warm up like this. Finally, we'd like to say thank you to all of our Patreons that support us. They get detailed recreation recommendations every Thursday evening. So if that sort of thing interests you, we feel free to check out our site at cascadianmountainweather.com. We also have the link in our show notes. So thank you so much for everyone to listening, and we hope you have a great weekend.